Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome back to Hawk Talk here on 91.7 The Edge, WSUW Whitewater, as well as on UWW-TV. It is Monday. We are back with another fantastic week, and I'm back with another fantastic crew. Sam Strash and Nolan Copy with me today. Sam, how are we doing?
We're feeling great. Feeling real great. It's a little cold outside, but luckily we're in a very well-insulated, might I say, radio studio.
Oh, I know. But if you would have told me that we were going to get snow on October 17th, I probably would have just stayed home. But
I nearly did. I kind of contemplated just not leaving the house today.
Yeah, well, you're looking comfy, so looks like you're holding up. Nolan, how are we doing today?
Pretty good. Also a little bit chilly, but it's a good Monday. I had a lot of fun announcing the Friday Night Lights matchup with UW Whitewater, and it's also kind of hard to believe that it's going to be 70 this weekend.
Yeah. And one thing I think about with that football game on Friday night, you were up in the booth with Sam Matheny doing UWW-TV. What was it like looking out at a sea of more than 18,000 Warhawk fans?
I'm not going to lie. It was a little strange just because, I don't know, if you were there last year against the UW Platteville game, you could tell it was going to be a big game. This one, I mean, you could tell that there was a lot of people there, but for it to be like 1,400 more than the record was at Perkins Stadium was just absolutely insane to me. Maybe it's because people just weren't jumping around as much as usual, or there wasn't as much activity, obviously, because everybody's freezing cold. But there were a lot of people there and a lot of Oshkosh fans. I did say this multiple times on the broadcast, but props to everybody on Oshkosh who came out, because they had fans just lining the fence on the opposite side, like standing room only, which for an away team is very impressive. But also Warhawk fans too, they were all lining the fence as well. So it was a really cool game. Really cool atmosphere.
I mean, it was one of the best WEAC rivalries. That's at least from a historical standpoint. In recent time, Oshkosh has been the team that's had the most success against Whitewater. So you'd expect for that to be a huge matchup every time they play. And I mean, it really lived up to the hype. And Warhawks pulled out another win, and they're going to hope to keep rolling there. But with that, we're going to move on to our first topic, and it's going to be called Our Warhawk Thought. So our Warhawk Thought is going to replace our Icebreaker segment. It's going to be the same thing, just giving it a new name. I think we're pretty familiar with each other at this point. So our topic for today is, if you could participate in any Olympic sport, what would it be and why? And anyone can start. Maybe we'll throw it at Nolan first, because I don't usually throw it at Nolan first, but go for it.
I was trying to think of a sport where I would be even somewhat competitive in. Obviously, you're talking about Olympic athletes, but I would probably just have to go with track and field, and I would be somewhat of a sprinter. I'm pretty fast as far as when I was in football and stuff like that. So I think I would have at least somewhat of a chance there. But if I'm going up against Usain Bolt, I'd be just shooting for third or fourth. But that'd probably be the one I have the most success in. So I'd go with track and field.
At that point, I feel like you just kind of have to distract Usain Bolt at first, and then just kind of tie his shoes together while he's not looking.
Yep, exactly. Or make a fake gunshot so he, gets a false start or whatever it's called.
You could probably still do 100 meters in 12 seconds with shoes tied together. He's just kind of a freak athlete.
Yeah.
Sam, what do you think?
I'd take your track and field and raise you one bobsledding.
Oh.
I feel like that's just the most fun thing to do. You just run with your little sled, and then you jump right in, and then you're just sitting there like this, and you're going 70, 80 miles an hour down this ridiculous course.
Luging.
You're going luging, yeah. Yeah, not bobsled. Yeah.
Well, that's pretty much the same thing. Yeah, it's
interchangeable, for us laymen here.
That would be so fun.
But I feel like it's just the most fun thing. You just sit there and you cruise along, throwing the tunes and just have at it.
Yeah, one of my favorite movies of all time is Cool Runnings. I don't know if you guys ever watched that with John Candy, the Jamaican bobsled team. It was one of the funniest movies that I watched when I was younger, and it really made me appreciate bobsled more. The only thing that I'd heard bobsled in before that was Mario and Sonic at the Winter Olympic Games. So,
Loved that game on the Wii, man.
Fancy little throwback. That's how I learned about pretty much every single Olympic event. But for me, obviously, I'm a big wrestling guy, so I would probably start with wrestling just because, that's what I know the best, and I think it would just be fun. Even if I just, went there and just got destroyed by some crazy Iranian dude, that would be awesome. But I think on the low, I've never been very good at ping pong, but I feel like that's the type of thing where I would just, like play it cool when I'm back in the States. Like I would just get like a normal desk job for like 9 months out of the year and then just go be the best ping pong player in the world for 3 hours every night. I think that would just be like the best life to live.
You know, what I wish they would do, though, the Olympic Committee, and it actually, if I'm not mistaken, it was a sport for one, I think it was Winter Olympic year, bowling was an Olympic sport. And it's always been one of those sports where the committee looks over any other sports that they think could generate a crowd and generate a lot of athletes to try out for. And bowling's one of those finalists, like, every single year. And I fairly know Tom Clark, the commissioner of the PBA. I kind of know him, first name basis, but he and I aren't like buddy or anything like that. But he's a cool dude, and I think the next time I see him, I'm gonna start pestering him into getting the PBA and the Olympic Committee together and trying to iron this out, because I feel like that would just be the most fun thing. It's one of the fastest growing sports in the world, especially between ages 6 to 18. Like it's getting a lot of popularity. I feel like that would just be a great idea.
And I mean, there's one that I'm kind of confused about. Have you guys seen Olympic walking?
Race walking.
Race
never
walking.
Heard of that,
It is unbelievable. These people just have massive hips. You have to have one foot on the floor at all times, but it's almost like a marathon, but like just walking.
How do you train for that? You just like go with grandma every day to the mall and start power walking?
You get the little weights in your hands, you know, and you're going, just cruising along.
Incline walking at the gym, pretty much. My buddy tells me it's good cardio. I never really get anything out of it. But with that, we're going to move on to our first topic. And it's going to be pertaining to the King of the North. We're going to talk about the NFC North for a little bit because it is interesting right now because the Packers have lost back-to-back games to two New York teams who usually are not very good, who are weirdly good this year. And that was to the Giants and the Jets. The Jets more recently, Sauce Gardner kind of just celebrated on Lambeau Field turf. Nobody really ever beats the Packers in Lambeau. So it was a weird game, especially in a blowout. The offense could never really get it going. They got ran all over again. And at the same time, the Vikings moved up to 5-1. So I feel like right now is sort of the time to start really asking the question, have the Packers passed the torch to the Vikings as the top team in the NFC North?
I mean, I want to say no. I really want to say no. But I don't think I can say no. And here's the problem. We knew that coming into the season that Aaron Rodgers, it wasn't going to be a flawless transition between having Devontae Adams running the receiving corps and transitioning to these rookies. And we also knew it wasn't going to be like the most difficult thing in the world to do. Hence why they're 3-3. I think right now it really just comes down to play calling as to why the Packers are struggling. But give credit to the Minnesota Vikings. You got to give credit where credit's due. They're a really good football team this year. I think they're really starting to turn some heads, and Kirk Cousins is finally starting to become the leader of that team. He's always put up the numbers, but he's finally starting to show signs of leadership and taking care of that locker room and making sure everyone's game ready every single week. And we're seeing that it's not quantifiable what a leader can do to a locker room. And I know I love saying that term, like not quantifiable, like when it comes to talking about intuition and anything involving like locker room jargon and being just a leader in the locker room or in baseball in the clubhouse. But I think that's really what's happening here, and you got to give credit to the Vikings for that.
I will agree and say that I think at least this year that the Minnesota Vikings are number one, and I could easily see them with the young core that they have continuing and being the top team in the NFC North for a number of years. Especially because besides the Packers, it doesn't seem like they have a ton of competition. I mean, we know the Bears are just a dumpster fire. Sorry, Chicago fans. And we know that the Lions, while they've shown bright spots, they're still sitting at 1-4 right now. For a team that had the best offense in the league coming into Week 5, I know they got shut out by the Patriots. You shouldn't be sitting at 1-4. But I will say this about the Vikings. They haven't looked spectacular this year. They haven't looked like the clear-cut best team in the NFC North. If the Packers start gelling things and, eventually maybe they make a move, maybe they go out and get an Odell Beckham Jr., or maybe they go out and get a DJ Moore. I know the Panthers just traded Robbie Anderson earlier today. A lot of Packer fans unhappy with that. Me personally, I don't really like him. I think that he kind of would mess up the culture, and I just don't like those guys who are problematic getting into the locker room. Like, you can take some issues, but I mean, this dude is yelling at his head coach on the sideline. So that was just a little tangent. But you go back to the Vikings. Yeah, I mean, they obviously had the very convincing win against Green Bay week 1, but then they lose to the Eagles week 2. Very close one against the Lions week 3. That game against the Saints in London, I mean, New Orleans was like this close to sending it into overtime. Will Lutz hits a double doink and, it doesn't count. The Bears game, I mean, if it weren't for, I forgot who stripped the ball, but the Bears were on a drive, and the Vikings were able to just come away with it in a game that they had, a big lead, and obviously they beat the Dolphins yesterday. The Vikings have still a tough schedule, and the Packers do as well. I just think it's all going to be about how do both these teams play down the stretch? Because if they both keep playing the way they're, playing right now, the Vikings are going to run away with it. But we're just going to have to see if the Packers can gel something together.
Yeah, I think this is going to be one of the most entertaining end of regular season runs out of most of these divisions. I know that a lot of divisions are keeping close, but I feel like some teams are going to start to fade. I don't think that either the Vikings or the Packers are ready to fade yet. And for that reason, I'm going to say that the Packers are still holding on to the torch. And I feel like it's going to stay that way until the Packers miss the playoffs. And I don't think that this is a year that the Packers miss the playoffs. I know it's been a rough start, but they still have Aaron Rodgers. I think that he's fully capable of bringing this team to the playoffs. Matt LaFleur has not proven anything other than success in his first few seasons. I think that he can bounce back. I think they got to figure out the run defense because that's killing them. Saquon, Breece Hall, it's ugly. They're getting so many yards and they're not really doing anything about it. And, I mean, transactions can be one thing. They got to really fill up that wide receiver room somehow. They got to get OBJ in on a little visit. He's been doing kind of those college tours recently. So they got to get him in on one of those games. Maybe they send him out to Buffalo and watch him play against Buffalo. But it could be interesting. I'm going to say that the Packers still have it for now. I mean, the Vikings look great, and they only have one more primetime game for the rest of the season, so it's not looking like they're going to be too horrible there. They're going to make it interesting. I will say that. I think the Packers still have enough talent where they can make a run. I think the Vikings are a more talented team, but coaching staff for me is questionable still. And at that rate, I think that it's going to be interesting. But do you think that I guess the next question for me is, do either of you guys think that Aaron Rodgers' future tenure with Green Bay is affected by the start that they're having?
Honestly, I don't think so. A lot of people I talked to are saying that at this point in the year, we should give up, we should start selling the house, and look forward to the Jordan Love era. And while, yes, there is some truth to that claim, we are still 3-3. We're in second place in a really tough division this year. The Detroit Lions are one of the highest scoring offenses in football this year, and they're currently in fourth place in our division. And this is a really tough division outside of Chicago. Chicago has looked atrocious this year. How they have 2 wins is beyond me. But Detroit's looked really good. Minnesota is asserting themselves as one of the top teams in the NFC, and Green Bay is kind of sitting somewhere in the middle right now. And I think part of what's going on is not really Aaron Rodgers' fault. Aaron Rodgers, I mean, yes, he's taken a subtle step back, but his subtle step back is still being one of the best quarterbacks in football. He's had slight accuracy issues with the deep ball this year. Big whoop. He's dealing with a rookie receiving core outside of Randall Cobb and Allen Lazard. Allen Lazard is one of the best possession receivers in the NFL.
And Cobb got banged up in the last game.
Cobb did get banged up, so there goes down another receiver. I love Allen Lazard strictly as a possession guy. He's not a deep threat, and that's okay. We need to start playing to our strengths versus trying to force things that we could do when we had Devontae Adams. My issue here with this Green Bay team does not lie with Aaron Rodgers, nor do I think is he going to leave after this year. The issue I kind of want to turn it here is to Aaron Jones. And it's not him that's the issue. It's Matt LaFleur not giving him enough touches. You look at 2 of the 3 losses this year that we've had. Aaron Jones carried the ball 5 times against Minnesota and carried it 9 times for only 19 yards against the Jets. He touched the ball 12 times yesterday in 13 possessions. This is a very dynamic player, and when we're not giving him the touches, this is why we're losing. And maybe that's a cause for concern for Aaron Rodgers, but I really don't think so. I think Aaron Rodgers is staying for a while. I think it's the play calling that's the issue. And Aaron Rodgers, we know that when Mike McCarthy was the head coach and when Nathaniel Hackett was the OC, Rodgers was audibling out of nearly everything they called. He was running the offense. I think that's kind of what we have to wire towards again and start trusting in the greatest thrower of the football ever as our offensive guru.
And I mean, Aaron Rodgers talked a lot about that in the post-game conference when he was saying that we need to simplify the offense. Whether or not we have Devontae Adams, these are rookie guys. These are guys who are clearly, not on the same page with Aaron Rodgers right now. I would say the majority of the receivers. He did have that nice deep ball to Allen Lazard yesterday. That was like a 20 to 30 yard gain. That was pretty nice. I mean, that was a great pass. He put it right in the exact spot. Great catch by Lazard, but those are few and far between this season, and he's right. We just need to simplify the offense. We're trying to do too much, and I think that they realize that problem, but they've now been saying that for the past couple weeks, so now it's time to actually, make the change and do that. Aaron Jones not getting the football, A.J. Dillon not getting the football are huge issues. Those are your two best offensive players aside from Aaron Rodgers. Those are your two most athletic offensive players, period. And the fact that they are not getting the ball is a problem. I know you had a very prolific passing attack in the past, but you just need to start relying more on the ground game. And as far as your question goes about Aaron Rodgers leaving, my opinion is that there absolutely is a chance that Aaron Rodgers retires after this season, and I think that any Green Bay Packers fan that is saying no is kind of in denial. I know there was a report already saying that Aaron Rodgers apparently had made it clear to the locker room that this was going to be his last season. I don't necessarily believe that because how many years have we heard that now in a row? But if you look at the Green Bay Packers situation, if Aaron Rodgers does not believe that there is an opportunity to win a Super Bowl, he's not going to stay. He's not going to be a part of a rebuild. He has said that. He's not going to be a part of, some mediocre team. So if we miss the playoffs this year, I think there's absolutely a chance that Aaron Rodgers could just pack it up and say, like, hey, best of luck in the future, best of luck with your rebuild, but, I'm not going to be a part of it. So I think there is a very real shot he retires. And I do think that it's going to be dependent on how they do this season, how they finish this season, and especially how they respond to this adversity.
Yeah, I can't really put in like a number or a year on when Aaron Rodgers is going to be done. I think it is dependent on how well the Packers do, but at this point, it's too early to tell. I think that this season, honestly, will though be determined before December, because we go on. We play the Bills, Lions, Cowboys, Titans, Eagles, and all of those teams have prolific offenses and a lot of weapons. And our defense is going to need to hold up against Derrick Henry, against DeAndre Swift, against Zeke, who honestly didn't look too bad in that game against the Eagles yesterday.
And Tony Pollard. Tony Pollard's been popping up.
Exactly.
Too.
Yeah, these are all great offenses that they're going to have to hold back, and they're going to have to get their offense to figure it out. And you can't even sleep on the Commanders. Carson Wentz has looked amazing this year. They're not getting the wins, but
he will be out though. That's
really.
Yeah, he
was that what I saw on Instagram. Busted his hand up,
broken thumb or something like that. So he'll be out 4 to 6 weeks, which is a break for the Packers. But I mean, we saw how that almost turned out against New England when Mac Jones was out. So
do we know who Ron Rivera is throwing in at QB1?
I would imagine it would be Taylor Heineke. Who was the starter last year, obviously, and who's the backup right now this year.
According to ESPN, Carson Wentz is currently listed as out.
Yep, there you go. But speaking of injuries, I think that's one of my main concerns with the Packers and Matt LaFleur is that it seems like ever since Matt LaFleur has taken over as a head coach, we've always had the weapons, but we've never been able to keep everybody healthy. Bakhtiari's never been consistently healthy. Elton Jenkins, never been consistently healthy since he's been here. Rodgers has been all right, but his wide receiver crew is shaky when it comes to that. We saw Randall Cobb go down. Royce Newman went down last week as well. Like, the offensive line can't stay healthy, and when you have, like, an older quarterback, no matter how talented he is, you're going to have a good offensive line in front of him if you want him to have success. I mean, you can't let Aaron Donald free run at Aaron Rodgers in December, because that's going to be cold and that's going to hurt.
And he was sacked like 4 times yesterday, which is obviously a very big concern. Usually even when they've had those injuries, they've been able to like slot guys in. They're very good at developing O-linemen, especially that they find in like late rounds. But this year, it's been a lot more of a concern. Aaron Rodgers getting sacked and getting pressured.
Yeah, and then like just keeping healthy, I think is going to be a huge part of it. Just because the wide receivers, obviously we've talked about that before, but everywhere else, we have an amazing secondary. We got Rashawn Gary, who's been tearing it up this year. We have like a lot of like positional depth, and we have a lot of talent, but can we keep those people healthy? And if we can keep them healthy, I think that we have a legitimate chance at making a run, but it just seems like we've never been able to do that under Coach LaFleur. It might not be his problem. It might not have anything related to him. It just seems like something that I've noticed. But I'd say beyond that, do you guys have any other thoughts on where the Green Bay's going this season?
I definitely think a lower wild card spot. You look at the NFC picture as a whole. The NFC towards the 5, 6, 7 and the first couple teams that miss the playoffs is very tight. There's going to be I want to say there's going to be 1 or 2 10-win teams that miss the playoffs. Could it be Green Bay? Absolutely. Do I think it will be? No. I think this team is definitely going to turn things around. They're too talented of a roster, especially on defense. You look at that linebacking room, you got guys like Quay Walker, Preston Smith, Devondre Campbell, Rashawn Gary. Preston Smith has been playing so good this year, he even went out on Twitter today and said that he's been getting random drug tests every 10 days to 2 weeks because of how well he's been performing this year. One of the best secondaries in the league. The front three on the line, Kenny Clark's been doing good. I want to know why Devontae Wyatt hasn't been getting as many touches on defense, or as many snaps on defense, I should say, over Dean Lowry. Because I think Devontae Wyatt can do everything Dean Lowry can do and then some. And if we keep everyone on the line, on the front line healthy on offense, I definitely can see this team turning it around. But as far as us making a run at a Super Bowl, I think that's out the window. I really don't think that is a possibility for this team anymore. And you can argue for sure, well, the team that won the Super Bowl back in 2010, 2011, that was a 6 seed. That was a 10-6 team that barely snuck into the playoffs and just got hot. Yes, that can definitely happen. But is it very likely to happen? Do I personally think it's going to happen? I think that's out the window.
I think if you're a Green Bay Packers fan today and you're looking for just like any positives to come out, I will say that I think the NFC is very much up for grabs. I know we saw the Eagles beat the Cowboys yesterday. They look like the clear number 1, but besides them, there are just not a lot of teams that are impressing me right now. And like I said, even the Vikings, who are 5-1, I don't have a ton of confidence in that they could necessarily make like a Super Bowl run. And again, any team can get hot at any time. But I mean, look at these teams that we thought were going to be good in the NFC this year that are just kind of disappointing us. The LA Rams, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, the Arizona Cardinals, the 49ers, you could say. I know they've been banged up, but you could say that they've been disappointing.
The Saints, too.
Yeah,
the Saints were supposed to be pretty good this year, and look where they are.
A lot of people had them picked as like a wild card candidate or possibly even dethroning the Bucs in the South. And just no teams have looked like spectacular besides the Philadelphia Eagles. So I will say that there is still lots of room to move up. And again, the NFL is just special in a way that I think you can get hot at any time. You can get hot in 1 week and just completely alter the course of your season, especially when it's this early. There's a reason why we do those overreaction segments on Wednesdays and why, they're so popular at the beginning of the season, because people love to overreact at the beginning of the season with some of this stuff. And it's like, we just finished week 6. Like, we still have 11, 12 more weeks to go here. So, it's a marathon, not a race, and there's still plenty of time to correct things. But it is very concerning.
I mean, we were talking about Sam's point before. In order to get to that 10-win mark, we'd have to go 7-4 for the rest of the season, which I think is something that the Packers are capable of. But until we get to that Week 17 point, we'll have to wait it out. But until then, we're going to cross over into basketball. We have the NBA season starting tomorrow. It's very exciting. The Warriors coming off the championship. If close to home, the Milwaukee Bucks, kind of disappointing finish to last season. But this offseason has been a real shakeup in the league, and there's a lot of moving parts that could really change the way that the NBA looks this season. But with that being said, today's the last day where you can really place your mark before any regular season stuff goes down. So we're going to call this segment You Heard It Here. So it's last time to say I called it. So first of all, we're going to talk about the teams that we like to make the conference finals in the Eastern and Western Conference. And I told these guys to check that out before the show and to come in with their picks. And we'll start with Nolan. Nolan, why don't you throw me your Eastern Conference final matchup?
All right, my Eastern Conference Finals matchup is definitely a media favorite, but I will say that the team I have as the number 1 seed in the Eastern Conference that I think will make the Eastern Conference is finally healthy this year, and that is the Brooklyn Nets. I think it's going to be the Brooklyn Nets versus the Milwaukee Bucks. Trust me, I've been one of the biggest people saying that we need to slow down on the Nets. They're overrated every year. They always get hurt. They always, don't live up to expectations. I think this is the year they finally do it. Ben Simmons is finally back out on the court, and he is,
Ben Simmons.
He's a great defensive piece that you can't always account for on a team like the Brooklyn Nets. He's not going to be a great offensive player, but he's a fantastic defender, one of the best in the NBA. You get Kyrie and Kevin Durant now both back for the entire season, hopefully, barring any big injuries, but that's still a lot of star power. You bring in a lot of good players. I just think that this team is ready to finally take that step that a lot of people have been expecting them to take, which is get to the Eastern Conference Finals. And I think the Bucks, as long as they stay healthy, I'll always say it, if Chris Middleton hadn't gotten hurt, they would have gone to the finals last year. And I think that course continues this season. They didn't lose anybody really of any importance. They get people like Joe Ingles here who, are those just, role players who can, alter a couple games in the playoffs too. They can be game changers. So I will say it's going to be Nets as the 1 seed versus the Bucks as the 3 seed. I'm going to say the Bucks win the Eastern Conference Finals in 6.
So, I think the Bucks are for sure going to be one of those teams that make it back. Like you said, to your point, when Chris Middleton is healthy, this is a completely different team. I think as a whole, the entire NBA community really doesn't understand just how good Chris Middleton is. He's one of the most consistent shooters in the league. He had a down year last year. It wasn't the greatest, but he's a perennial all-star candidate. I wouldn't say he's a superstar by any means, but I am willing to say that he is one of the best, if not the best, number 2 option in the NBA. And I'm not afraid to share that. I think in terms of accountability, he's better than Anthony Davis. Because Anthony Davis, you don't know if he's going to be healthy or not. You really don't know. It's always a toss-up for him. But I think with Chris Middleton healthy, he's going to miss the start of the year. That's all right. I mean, it's the very beginning of the year. Yes, every game counts, but it's not the end of the world. So I think the Bucks are for sure going to make it to the Eastern Conference Finals. I have them as my 1 seed, 68-14. I think that's feasible for this team. They added some. They kept most of the core intact, and now with an expanded role with Bobby, especially to start the year, we get to see what he can do as a starter. We already know what he can do off the bench, what he can provide for us off the bench. But we can see what he can do as a full-time contributor. I think that's honestly going to be beneficial for this team. I got the Bucks, number 1 seed. They'll make it. And then as my number 6 seed, this is a surprise, the Cleveland Cavaliers. I think Cleveland can put it together this year. They have a very, very young and very talented roster. And now adding Donovan Mitchell to that team, I wouldn't say that's the finishing touch. In no way do I think the Cavs will get past the Bucks, but I think they'll make it, and I think they'll put up a darn good series. But that's my little surprise. That's my little shocker out of the Eastern Conference, is that the Cleveland Cavaliers are going to make the Eastern Conference Finals.
Just real quick, I'm on the Cleveland train too, but to your point, there does always seem to be like that one team that kind of pops up out of nowhere and is in the conference finals. Like a couple of years ago, it was the Hawks. Mm-hmm. Last year, you could kind of make the argument that it was the Mavericks, who not a lot of people thought were going to get past the Suns. So very interesting, but I like that pick.
Yeah, I agree. And Drew Barron would like that pick too. He pretty much picked all Cavaliers guys on his on Nolan show a couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to do a whole lot of repeating my Eastern Conference Finals. Bucks and Nets. I got the Bucks as the higher seed, probably the 1 seed, and then I got the Nets filling in 2 or 3. I think if the Nets are healthy, they're going to make it a 7-game series again. But I still think that the Bucks can go to the NBA Finals based on that matchup. I'm not sold on the Celtics without Ime Udoka. I've never really been sold on the Miami Heat, and I mean the Sixers. It could be interesting, but I don't know the mesh with Joel Embiid and James Harden. But with that, we'll quick move over to the Western Conference Finals. I'll start that one. And so for the Western Conference Finals, I'm going to call it the Denver Nuggets and the Minnesota Timberwolves.
Ooh.
Yeah, that's my shocker. I am riding high on the Timberwolves this season. I think that they could be I think this could be the type of thing where I could say the Timberwolves come in as a 4 or 5 seed, knock off the Warriors maybe in the round beforehand, and then make an appearance against the Nuggets, who come in as the 2 or 3. I think the Nuggets are a spectacular team this year if everybody stays healthy. We look at Jamal Murray, we look at Jokic, we look at the supporting crew. I think Michael Porter Jr., if he stays healthy, can be really one of the best number 3 options on both sides of the ball at this point. I think that he's proven that he is that type of talent when he's healthy. And because of that, I'm going to take the Nuggets over the Timberwolves. I love Anthony Edwards. I love Karl Anthony Towns. But for me, Cat still has to show up in the playoffs before they can make a finals run. I'm not totally sold on it yet. I love the talent on the team, though. The Timberwolves are going to make a great run. I got the Nuggets in 5.
I definitely have the Timberwolves making the playoffs, but I don't have them making it past the first round. Currently, so I did a little schedule prediction, and it's kind of hard to do with the NBA because there's so many games, and you have to account for the random nights in November when the Kings are going to blow out the Bucks by 40. But I had the Timberwolves making it as my 8th seed, getting through the play-in. They play the Suns, who finished 61-21. They're the first seed in the West. And they take one game, but they're not going to get past the Suns. Speaking of the Suns are making the conference finals, according to me. I think that team, yes, all the DeAndre Ayton drama, Chris Paul with injuries and getting age concerns, like does he retire soon? What's his play load going to be like this year? What's his workload going to be? Is there going to be any load management involved with Chris Paul? Devin Booker, is he still going to shoot the lights out of the ball? I think so. I think this is probably the most well-congealed and most whole team in the West, even if they do get rid of Jay Crowder. I think this team is, in general, they don't have any holes. The Suns do not have any holes, and I think that's going to show this year. They're going to make the Western Conference Finals, and they are going to face a team that takes out the Mavericks in 7 in the first round and the Warriors in 7 in the second round, the 3 seed Memphis Grizzlies.
Journeyman.
I think this year, the Memphis Grizzlies, they have enough experience now with that younger roster. They have a little bit more playoff experience in Jonas Valanciunas down at the 5. Ja Morant is turning into the league's next superstar in my eyes, and I think that's going to show this year. I have them finishing 54-28 as the 3 seed, and they're going to make it all the way to the conference finals.
My Western Conference Finals, I have the Denver Nuggets as the 1 seed. I think that they're going to make it there for all the points that you said. They are finally healthy. When they were healthy in years past, even before Jokic was this MVP caliber player, they were getting number 1 seeds in the Western Conference. And you can make the argument that the West wasn't as tough back then. But I don't know, something about the Nuggets when if they all gel and they all, are finally, up to speed and they're healthy, I just think that it's going to be very hard to stop them. And then the team that they face, I've been going back and forth, but I'm gonna go with the underdog just because why not? You hit an underdog, you feel like $1 million, and if you hit a regular team, you were correct. So I'm gonna go with the New Orleans Pelicans getting into the Western Conference Finals.
Wow!
I really think so. I would be, I wouldn't be surprised if it was the Clippers. That was the other team I was going back and forth between because I could see them really making a run now that they're all healthy again. But, why not? The Pelicans had a very good run last year in the playoffs. Obviously, they lost, ended up losing. But I just don't know. I really liked what I saw, and something in my gut is telling me that they're going to succeed. I think Zion finally stays healthy for a full year this year. And I just like what's going down in New Orleans, so I'm going to say it's going to be Nuggets versus Pelicans.
And I think that we all kind of surprised each other with our picks. There was one mainstay in there and then one that we kind of just threw out. I still think it's kind of criminal to leave teams like the Warriors and the Clippers out of this conversation, but at the same time, we do have to pick our NBA champions, so we're going to do that next. We'll start with Sam. Sam, why don't you give me your NBA champion?
So, first things first, there's a little bit of a syntactical error on my part. Steven Adams is the starting center for the Grizzlies, not Jonas Valanciunas. They were flip-flop for each other. That does not change my pick. For the NBA Finals, I'm taking the Suns and the Bucks for part 2. 2 years separated, but part 2.
Get your popcorn.
And here's what I'm thinking about this. Once I load it here into the schedule predictor, we're going to see that the Bucks are going to host games 1 and 2 once again. Games 1 and 2 this time around. The Suns hosted the first time around. That's how we had Bucks in 6 at home. Mm-hmm. I'm taking the Bucks game 1, taking the Suns game 2 and 3. This is going to be another very tightly contested series between two teams that seemingly have no holes. And the Bucks, we've heard from out of camp this year that Mike Budenholzer is starting to ditch the let them shoot philosophy on defense, where you have to outshoot the Bucks from the three-point line to beat them. If you don't, good luck, because we have the best freak of nature athlete on the planet in a Bucks jersey with a great supporting cast around him, one of the best defending guards, a very great all-around number 2 option in Middleton when healthy, Bobby off the bench, Brook down low, maintaining defense. Yeah, he's getting older, but he's still a force on defense and a decent shooter from 3, which is something like 5 years ago you didn't think you'd be saying that about Brook Lopez, but here we are. And he's still shooting a lot better now than he was 5 years ago, and he's 5 years older.
Splash Mountain, baby.
So I'm taking the Bucks game 1, Suns game 2, game 3. I think that the Suns are too talented of a team to not win a couple games in this series. Give me the Bucks in 6. Again.
Repeat.
They'll win the next 3 out. They'll take another one in Phoenix. And it's tough because the philosophy here is you think you just got to win one road game and win all your home games. Yes, this is true. Both teams are going to win a road game here. It's going to come down to who wins more road games, not just one. And I think that's going to be the Bucks here. They're just an all-around better team. I'm taking them.
Imagine being Chris Paul after that. Losing to the Bucks twice in the finals at the end of your time.
I'd retire. I'd be done.
My NBA Finals prediction is going to be, I already said the Bucks would win in 6 over the Nets. In the Western Conference Finals, I think the Nuggets would win in 5 over the Pelicans. I think New Orleans would be able to get 1. But like you see with the majority of those teams that are kind of surprises getting into the conference finals, they never really pan out and actually go all the way to upset, a team and get into the finals. So I'm going to go Nuggets Bucks, which I would love to see. I think that would be, again, two smaller franchises like it was with Milwaukee and Phoenix. And I really like that because I think that all leagues, not just the NBA, favor those those LAs, those Miamis, those big city, big market teams. So whenever a little market team gets in there, I love it, and having 2 of them in the finals would be fantastic. But for my prediction, I would go, I think the Nuggets would win game 1. I think the Bucks would also win game 2. I think Milwaukee would turn around and win both of theirs at home. I think Denver, when they return home, would win game 5, and then the Bucks would win in 6 over the Denver Nuggets, with Giannis Antetokounmpo being probably the clear pick for the Finals MVP there. I think the inexperience would hurt the Nuggets in the playoffs. Obviously they do have playoff experience, but they have never gotten to the finals. They've only gotten to the conference finals once, and the Milwaukee Bucks have done this already. I just think that they'd be able to better fight through the adversity that comes through the NBA Finals, and they would take it in 6, and we get another championship in Milwaukee. Maybe wishful thinking, but that is my honest prediction.
I have the Nuggets and Bucks in the finals as well.
Well, we have similar predictions, Drew.
Yes, but I am going to disagree with you on the champion. I think that the Nuggets can beat the Bucks in 6. And I think that Jokic is just a spectacular player. And you look at the stat line he's putting up with a team that was unhealthy, a team that probably should not have been where they were last year. I think when you give him Jamal Murray, I think when you give him Michael Porter Jr., I think if you give him the rest of the crew who is playing maybe less minutes, getting less tired, being able to hold on to more time, getting into deeper series, I think that the Nuggets would end up being a better team. And I think once you get to the NBA Finals, I think Jokic can match Giannis. I think from a shooting standpoint, Chris is going to be hard to manage, but I think that there's a lot of people who can score the ball in the Nuggets. And I think that it would just be enough for them to have overall better defense than the Bucks. So I'm going to take the Nuggets there. Very quickly, before we move on to our last topic, we'll go our speed round for these last few topics that we brought up. So, sleeper team. Nolan, why don't you start?
Sleeper team, I guess you could kind of say the Pelicans because I just picked them to go to the conference finals. But the sleeper team that I picked, which was separate, was the Atlanta Hawks. I think that they will finish top 4 or 5 in the Eastern Conference when I'm seeing them as a heavy play-in on a lot of these predictions. I just think Atlanta has so many good pieces. They went to the conference finals a couple of years ago. I know that they made a run, but they got DeJounte Murray, who I think is also going to really help them. So I would not be surprised to see Atlanta in the top 5 in the Eastern Conference this year.
So I think the general consensus in the NBA community is that the Cavs are a lot better than they were last year. They were a play-in team last year, and with Donovan Mitchell, they're going to be a play-off team. That's not my surprise here. Another team that I think got a lot better this offseason, especially through the draft, is the Orlando Magic. And I have the Orlando Magic making it back to the playoffs this year at 47-35.
Not bad. There's a lot of people who are not big fans of the Magic, but I think that they definitely have the talent to do so. My sleeper team is going to be the Lakers, and it's basically just because of the talent that they have with LeBron and Anthony Davis. I think if they're a team that stays healthy, I think that they could, even if they get to the play-in tournament, I think that they could be a dangerous team for those first-round teams to face, similar to the way that they were a couple years ago. I mean, you can call them a Disney champion all you want. I think that it still counts. I think that it was even harder conditions to play in Disney.
The vaunted Mickey Mouse ring.
Yeah, and then we'll go...
The Bubble Guppies.
We'll go with one more. Who do you think wins the Victor Wembanyama sweepstakes? Who gets the number 1 pick in next year's draft?
Houston Rockets.
San Antonio Spurs. I think they have the talent to not be the worst seed, but I think Pop kind of tells them to lose. They've done this before. They did this to get Tim Duncan. They're going to do it again.
I'm going with the Pacers. I think that they're already trying to shop out Buddy Hield and Miles Turner. I think that they're fully looking for a rebuild here, and I think they want to match up Wembanyama with Tyrese Halliburton, among others. But with that, we're going to move on to our final topic. We're going to get a little philosophical here. Our topic is, does talent exist? Our debate today will be if natural-born talent exists in sports. The main sides to this argument are, 1, you need to have a tremendous work ethic and perfect your craft in order to have success in sports. And 2, some people are just born as raw athletes and thus have success in their sports. Nolan, initial thoughts?
It's, like you said, very philosophical, tough question to answer, but I would have to say that talent is a very big part of sports. I will not say that it is the deciding factor as far as if you're going to be successful or not, because I think that there are plenty of examples of guys who maybe did not have as much talent, but were just as successful, if not more successful than those guys. You look at Tom Brady, how many people thought he was going to be? You could not tell me that he had just this outrageous amount of talent to win 7 Super Bowls. It is his work ethic. He has... His TB12 work ethic is like a whole brand for him. Kobe Bryant's work ethic was a whole brand for him, the Mamba mentality. So I think that there is a lot to say about work ethic there. But talent, a lot of the time, is going to trump it. Even some of the guys who have no talent, even if you're working as hard as you possibly can, sometimes you're just not going to get past those guys with talent. I know in high school football, at least around where I grew up, there was a lot of saying where it was just like the best players play on the field, period. And that I'm sure is around the league, around everywhere, no matter where you look, NFL, NBA, MLB. If you are talented and you even try a little bit, you're probably going to be better than a majority of players. So I think that while it's not the ultimate thing, talent is a very major part of succeeding in professional sports.
I feel like we should probably have another hour to talk about this because of just the massive rabbit hole that we could fall down here. But I want to keep things a little short. There's truth to both sides of this. You're obviously not going to get anywhere relying on natural talent, which I think does exist. I think that is most definitely a thing. But you're not going to have that be your backbone to getting to where you want to be in life. And that can go anywhere besides sports, too. That can go for this. Like, there's actual practice that goes into being on a radio show or announcing a game. We all know that. We've done it before. But in the same right, you guys will both agree that there are some people that are just naturally better at public speaking. There are people that are just naturally better with book smarts. There are people that are naturally better with people skills. How does that not apply to sports? There's some people where right away, as a kid, you'd have like your elementary school races on like the blacktop or on the playground or whatever, or playing flag football or dodgeball in elementary school, and working your way all the way up through the ranks to when kids start to become gym rats and are taking thousands of supplements every day that they don't know about because they're 15, but they do it because their older brother does it and they think it's cool. And you get people in the weight room that are just naturally stronger. There are different naturally, people are born with different body sizes. Like, there's some people that are naturally bigger. I just like to eat a lot. I'm not making an argument for myself here, but there are people that are naturally scrawnier. Like, how does this not apply to sports? Like, if this is what we can all somewhat agree on, that there are like different natural tropes and archetypes in many different walks of life, how does this not apply to athleticism? How does it not apply to playing sports?
I'm going to take the other side of it. I'm not saying that talent is non-existent, but at the same time, I would like to say that you need to be able to work in order to get to a certain level in sports. And it really goes down to like mechanics as a youth. Like the way that you grow up, like who are you learning to throw a football from, whether it's a family member or you're just watching it on TV or anything like that. Who's teaching you your work ethic? There are NFL players that did 100 push-ups and 100 sit-ups in between commercials while watching football as 8 years old. Like, who's teaching them that? And who's saying otherwise? Oh, you can take a break today if you don't feel good. It's a mental thing in many ways. And I think that people who establish a mental level where, one, they feel like they have the ability to be successful through dedication and hard work, I think that those eventually trope the people who just have natural talent. Because you always see the situation where you see, like in high school, you have a great athlete, but can't ever play him because he has 4 Fs in school. As a person, you have to achieve certain, you have to check certain boxes in order to be able to participate in these sports. And a lot of these sports are not going to want someone who is not ready cerebral in that point. We've already seen the CTE stuff happen with the NFL, and that's really taking a big dive right now. Do you feel comfortable saying that Tua could go out in the mental state that he's in right now?
I guess I'll leave that speculation aside, and I'm not a doctor, so I really wouldn't know. But as somebody who had a concussion, and in my concussion when I was in football, I was asking the same question every 5 seconds. I know my parents always told me that it, scared the heck out of them and stuff like that, and it's scary stuff. But when you're talking about this guy, even though he didn't officially, he had 2 concussions in a matter of 4 days, because you can't tell me that one on Sunday was not a concussion, the one he faced against the Bills. I mean, he was stumbling around. You don't do that when you have a back injury. And then seeing what happened against Cincinnati and how scary that situation was, I really just think that they should shut him down for the season, because you got to think about your future here. If you're Tua, if you get another one in a matter of a month, if you get 3 concussions within a month, that could cost you your career, and possibly even something more serious than that. So I will say with that, I would not send him out there.
I think the injuries are also a huge part, is because and it goes back to the mental thing. Everybody is going to go through an injury at some point in their life, and they're going to have to process it. And some people process stuff way differently than others. Someone breaks their leg when they're 7 years old. they're probably going to be scared about that for the rest of their life. If you're like me and you didn't break a bone until like your sophomore year of high school, you weren't worried about it as much. I've broken one bone in my life. And I think that also factors in. I think that mentally you have to be prepared to take on a lot of gruesome stuff in order to be successful in sports. I think that you can have a lot of talent, but I think if you don't have a lot of it going on up here and you're not working hard and you're not doing things right, you're not having healthy relationships, I think that it has a factor on how you perform athletically. I think that your body reacts a lot to your mind, and I think that's important to talk about when you have this conversation.
And that kind of ties into learned behaviors. Like you were kind of starting to scratch the surface on that earlier when we were talking about like who's teaching you how to throw a baseball? Who's teaching you to go out on the lanes and start getting a little bit of spin on that bowling ball? You know, that's what everyone wants to do as a kid. They see these guys throwing the ball starting at board 39, getting it out to board 1, and having it zoom right back in, knock them all down, pins flying everywhere. It's like, wow, that's the coolest thing in the world. And who's teaching you how to do that, you know? And I think part of it ties into just watching and just observing. And kids, when you're young, you are very susceptible to everything you take in through here, and anything that comes out through your mouth or through your actions, like people are constantly correcting that so you can start learning the right way to do it. The earlier you learn, the more talented you are. Now, does that mean you're mentally strong or does that mean you're physically strong? I don't know. I'm really not a psychologist, but I do know from experience, from playing sports from a young age, there are a lot of people that are just naturally a lot more talented than other kids. I mean, I've seen it playing in high school and baseball. There's guys that are in the weight room all the time. Football, guys are in the weight room all the time. They don't play because they're not hardwired to. It really comes down to that. My little brothers, both of them are starting to get into the weight room a little bit more. One of them's a baseball player. I think he's gonna go miles with this thing. He's looking at junior colleges right now. I don't want to spend anything or share anything just for his own privacy, you know. But the other one is starting to slowly get into weightlifting, right? And as much as I love my little brother, man, he is one of the most unathletic people I've ever met. And we constantly show him, me and my other little brother. This is the youngest one we're talking about, and I mean he's 6'2". Like he has the build to be just this huge force on the line or in the front seven on defense in football, and we teach him these things and we show him how to do stuff. He's just not talented enough to do it, and it really stinks. But there's people like that where you're just not hardwired to do that. The neurons aren't firing the right way to show you the proper coordination, the proper mechanics, despite what you see at a slightly older age. It just doesn't click.
And you weren't kidding when we were talking about going down a rabbit hole, because we almost evolved into where does talent come from right here. But
that's what I'm saying. We need another hour.
I think that it can be best summed up by saying work ethic with no talent will trump, talent with no work ethic. But talent with work ethic, sorry, it's a bit of a tongue twister here, is going to be, work ethic with less talent every time. Because there's so many situations. You talk about NFL, NBA, MLB draft busts. The reason you're a bust usually is because you had a ton of talent and you just did not put the work in. Not always, don't get me wrong. There's injuries, there's different stuff that can happen. But, you think about somebody like Jamarcus Russell, who had all the talent in the world and just did not put in the effort. You hear these stories about he just did not watch film whatsoever and did not want to just put in the work ethic, the time it takes to become good at your profession. And he didn't work out because of it. Guys who were probably less talented than him did better in their careers because they were actually willing to watch film, try and practice, all these things that, are a part of being an NFL quarterback. And again, there's so many examples like that. But at the end of the day, talent will win out. But like we've all kind of said, you need to put in the work ethic still if you have that talent.
All right, I'll throw one more quick little question out here. So this kind of relates to, let's say you're the son of an NBA player, but your mom is 5'5", so you end up somewhere between 5'7" and 5'9", and they really want you to be this great athlete. And you could be capable of doing it, but sometimes you get that parent issue where they become your coach from a young age, and they tell you that you have to do this thing and nothing else matters. And I think there are kids who are tremendously talented who get to do that, and they do great early on, but I think that they get to a point where they start to hate playing, or they hate being in the sport, and that's mostly because they're doing it not for themselves but for someone else. And I think that creates that mental block where it's like, what am I going to do if I don't have this? This is the only thing that I've ever been taught. This is the only thing I've ever had. What happens if this goes out the window? And that one-dimensional thing is not something that you can have. And that's why another reason why I would argue that talent cannot be the sole factor in anything.
And I mean, yeah, you talk about having like those kind of people when they grow up will probably have like an existential crisis, like you said, because it's like, well, this is all I know. This is all I've done. I don't necessarily know if I'm even, good at anything else. Obviously, they are, but you don't really think about that in the moment. But at the same time, it's like, man, I really hate playing this sport, and I've been just forced to my entire life because sports needs to be fun. I know that some people think it's a corny thing to say, well, at least they had fun out there and stuff like that. But sports does need to be fun as much as if you guys played, I'm sure you guys played sports in high school, as much as you dreaded like going to practice and stuff like that. And it's just like, like especially for football when it's like 90 degrees outside and you're like, man, I really don't want to practice today, but it makes it all worth it going out and, the Friday night lights. So that, like you said, that is a major thing that can create a mental block that, maybe slows down your work ethic.
Yeah, and the people who love to do that are the ones that end up usually having the most success with their sport. They don't budge in the face of adversity. They just keep pushing through. But I'll let Sam wrap up our little segment here.
I think that's kind of tying into a slightly different subject matter where we're talking about mental health in sports. And I would love to talk more about that too, especially next week as we go. But I think we were kind of scratching the surface on like that person has tremendous work ethic and talent, but they're being forced into it. So what does that do to your mind? Like the neurons fire, but they don't want to fire, So, but I feel like that would be a completely separate topic that I would definitely love to talk about.
Yeah, and I mean, it kind of just triggers everything throughout your body, through your brain, and that's something that's important to talk about. They're having a seminar coming up on campus talking about sports and mental health and what are some like things that lead to issues and how you can tell if you're having mental health issues related to your sport. But with that, we're going to quickly get into final thoughts. We do not have a whole lot of time left, so we'll start with Sam. Sam, why don't you throw me your final thought?
Very upset that the Seattle Mariners couldn't pull out one game against the Houston Astros in the ALDS. I thought they definitely could have, and it looked like they should have in my eyes. But overall, this postseason has been very awesome to watch, with the Phillies upsetting the Braves. I thought the Braves were going to win it all again. The Padres taking out the 111-win Dodgers. I mean, just the National League has been super entertaining, and I'm really excited to keep watching as October goes.
I mean, that Game 3 game had me passed out on the couch, however many innings it was. Pretty much.
Yeah. Baseball.
Yeah, I mean, I can't say the word, but blank the Dodgers. Thank the Lord that the San Diego Padres won. Either one, whoever wins between the Phillies or the Padres, I don't care at this point, but just the fact that the Dodgers and the Braves are both out of it, relief off my chest. But I will say, for my final thought, I just wanted to say, I know we had a bus team category on the NBA predictions real quick, and I just wanted to say it real quick, mostly because it was a team that was in your Western Conference Finals. I think the Memphis Grizzlies are going to be a playing team at best this season. I really think that they just take a step back. Jaren Jackson's going to be out until November at the earliest. And even then, I don't know. It's just something about those teams that have a very young core that do really well one season. It always seems like they have a regression year before they get back up to the top, and I think that's going to happen to them.
I don't like
year.
it, but I respect it.
Yeah, I mean, my final thought, we finally had our first broadcast on 91.7 The Edge for the football game on Friday. It turned out great, but with that, we're going to wrap it up. Thank you guys for tuning in. Tune in Tuesday to Thursday, 5 to 6 on 91.7 The Edge, WSUW Whitewater. See ya.